Hello everyone! We will talk about the reader response criticism. So what is reader response criticism? It is a way of looking at literature that focuses on how readers make sense of a story, poem, or any text. Instead of focusing on what the author intended or just analyzing the words on the page, this approach says that the reader plays a big role in creating the meaning of the text. It says that when you read something, your own thoughts, experiences, and feelings help create the meaning of the story. Instead of focusing only on what the author meant or what the words say, this approach believes that the reader's interpretation is important too. Every person might understand a story in a slightly different way because everyone brings their own personal experiences into their reading. In short, reader response criticism is all about how you, as a reader, interact with the text and what it means to you. In short, reader response criticism is all about how you, as a reader, interact with the text and what it means to you. So, there's several key concepts in reader response criticism. So, the first is the reader's role. So, according to this view, a story or poem doesn't have a fixed meaning until someone reads it. Each person brings their own feelings, thoughts, and life experiences to the reading. So, the meaning of a text can change depending on who is reading it. So, in reader response criticism, the idea is that a story or a poem doesn't have just one set meaning until someone reads it. When you read, you bring your own feelings, thoughts, and life experiences with you. That means that the way you understand the story can be different from how someone else sees it. The meaning changes based on who is reading it. So next is different readers, different meanings. So no two readers are exactly the same. So the way they understand the story can be very different. For example, someone who has experienced loss may read a sad poem very differently from someone who hasn't. Both readings are valid according to reader response criticism. Because everyone is different, they understand the stories in their own way. So, for example, if a person has gone through a sad experience, just like from the first example, like losing a loved one, they might feel more connected to a sad poem. But someone who hasn't had that experience might see the poem differently. Reader response criticism says that both ways of understanding are correct because everyone brings their own perspective to the story. So next is filling in the gaps. So some texts have parts that aren't fully explained, and readers have to fill in those gaps based on what they think or feel. This makes reading more interactive because the reader is helping to complete the story. So sometimes a story doesn't explain everything and the reader has to fill in the missing details. For example, if a story says he left the house feeling sad, it doesn't explain why the character is sad. As a reader, you might guess he's sad because of something in the story, or you might imagine your own reason. This makes reading more interactive because you are helping to complete the story with your own ideas. The next is community influence. So sometimes people who are from the same culture or have similar life experiences will interpret a text in similar ways. These groups are called interpretive communities. For example, People from the same generation might all relate to a story about growing up in the digital age in a similar way. So, another example, if a group of teenagers read a book about social media, they might all relate to the pressures of posting online, while older readers might focus on different aspects of the story. The last key concept is the personal connection. So, reader response criticism emphasizes that how a reader personally connects with the text is important. It's not just about understanding what the author meant, it's about how the text affects the readers on an emotional or personal level. So reader response criticism emphasizes that how you personally connect with the text is important. It's not just about what the author meant, but also how the story makes you feel and what it reminds you of. Your personal connection to the text can change the way you understand it. So, example, if you read a book about a character who moves to a new city and you've had the same experience, you might relate to the character's feelings of excitement or nervousness. That personal connection shapes how you see the story. So, in short, reader response criticism values the reader's feelings, experiences, and interpretations, making the reading process personal and unique. So, why is this important, or why reader response criticism is important? So, reader response criticism is important because it recognizes the reading is a personal experience. This makes literature more accessible because it allows for many different interpretations rather than just one correct answer. And also, reader response criticism is important because it says everyone reads differently. It's not just about what the author wanted to say or what the words on the page mean by themselves. Instead, the meaning of a story comes from how the reader feels and connects with it. This makes reading more open since there can be many different interpretations. There's not just one right way to understand the story. Then, so let's provide a simple example of reading response criticism. So, imagine you and a friend both read a book about a dog. You might feel happy because it reminds you of your dog, but your friend might feel sad because they recently lost their pet. Even though you both read the same book, the way you understand and feel about it is different. Reader response criticism says that both reactions are correct because each of you is bringing your own personal experiences to the story. Another example, let's say two people read a book about moving to a new city. One person is excited because they love new adventures, so they see the characters move as fun and thrilling. The other person is nervous about change, so they feel the character must be scared or stressed. Both interpretations are valid because the readers are bringing their own feelings and experiences to the story. So, in conclusion, in reader response criticism, the reader plays a central role in determining what a text means. This approach values the personal connections. Readers make and accept that different people will understand the story in different ways based on their own lives. And the reader is just as important as the story. It values how each person connects with the text and understands it in their own way. This means that stories can have different meanings for different people, depending on their lives and feelings.
Good day, everyone. So now let me discuss to you how to use the reader response in literary criticism in analysis. So, as the first reporter discussed to us earlier, that the reader response criticism is a literary theory that emphasizes the reader's role in creating meaning and experiencing a literary work. Reader response critics argue that meaning is not fixed within the text but rather constructed by the reader through their own experiences, values, and beliefs. This means that each reader's interpretation of a text is unique and can vary depending on factors such as their cultural background, personal experiences, and their emotional state. So now let's proceed to the steps on how to use the reader response criticism in analysis. And I also provided some examples for you to understand better and for you to have an idea on how to use the reader response criticism in your analysis. So the first step is introduce the name and author of the text. This means that you should start your response by identifying the title of the work you're discussing and the person who wrote it. So when you are analyzing a text and you are using the reader response criticism, you need to identify first the title of the text and who is the author of the text that you are analyzing. For example, the text we are analyzing is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, a short story written by James Thurber. So the second step is explain what the text is about. This asks you to provide a brief summary of the story's plot. You should focus on the main events and the central conflict of the text. The description of the main idea of a piece of writing, and it's a request to identify the central theme, the key points, and the overall message conveyed by the text. And it's asking for a concise and clear overview of the text content, similar to providing a short elevator pitch for the piece of writing. For example, the story follows Walter Mitty, a meek and unassuming man who escapes the monotony of his daily life by slipping into vivid daydreams. So now, this is the third steps on how to use the reader response criticism in your analysis. So, the third one is write about what you thought of the text and why. This is where you express your personal opinion about the story. So, when you are analyzing a literary text and you are using a reader response criticism, you need to write also your thought about the text and why. You should explain what you found interesting, engaging, or thought-provoking about the text that you have read, and provide some reasons for your feelings. For example, I found The Secret Life of Walter Mitty to be a poignant and humorous exploration of the human desire to escape from reality. So now let's proceed to the fourth step, answer any guided reading questions you are assigned. This means you should respond to any specific questions that have been given to you about the story or the text. The fourth steps implies that direct response is required, meaning you should provide solutions or explanations to the questions. This indicates that all assigned questions should be addressed, not just a selection. These are questions specifically designed to help the reader understand and engage with the text. They often focus on key concepts, vocabulary, or the author's purpose. This also clarifies that the questions are given as part of a specific task or assignment. Just like, for example, if you were asked what is the main conflict in the story, so for you to answer the questions or the question, you need to, or you would identify the central problem or the struggle in the story. Just like in our example, you need to identify the Walter Mitty, or what are the struggles that Walter Mitty faces in the story. So now let's proceed to the fifth steps on how to use the reader response criticism in your analysis. So the fifth one is give examples to support your thoughts. So when you express your opinions or answer questions, you should back up your points with specific details from the story. So when you are analyzing a story or a text and you are using the reader response criticism, you need to back up all of your points, or when you are done expressing your opinions or answering the questions in the story, you should back up all of your points with the specific details from the story. And this includes the quotes, descriptions of scenes, or references to characters' actions. For example, the scene where Mitty is driving his car and daydreaming about piloting a hydroplane, only to be abruptly brought back to reality by his wife's scolding, perfectly illustrates the constant tension between Mitty's fantasies and his real life. So you need to back up all of your expressed opinions and all of your answered questions. So finally, the last steps on how to use the reader response criticism in your analysis is you need to conclude with a summary of your thoughts. This means that you should end your response with a brief recap of your main points and a final statement about your overall impression of the text. So in this step, before ending your analysis, you should respond also a brief recap of all of your main points and all of your final statement, or all of your impressions about the text. So just like for example, in conclusion, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is a timeless story that explores the universal human desire for fulfillment and the challenges of finding it in a world that often feels mundane and unfulfilling. So that was the example on how to use the sixth step in using the reader response criticism in your analysis. And that ends my part. So now let's welcome our next reporter.
So now, how you will analyze text using this approach. So the reader response criticism focuses how you as a reader create meaning from the text. Not just what the author is intended. It's about your personal reaction or experiences, as well as your background, shaping your own understanding. Think of it as a conversation between you and the text, where both of you give meaning to the text. So now, moving on, here's how reader response criticism can be used to analyze text. First, you have to identify the reader's role. Number one here, the active participant. Reader response criticism emphasizes that the reader is not just a passive recipient. As what I've said earlier, both of you give or create meaning within the text. So, active participant, they actively participate in creating meaning by drawing on their own perspective, own experiences, beliefs, and background. Next is personal interpretation. The reader's interpretation is subjective, and it also shaped by their own perspective. So there is no correct or wrong in giving interpreting text. It's because it is based on your personal perspective. So number two, exploring the reader's response. First one here is emotions and thoughts. The reader's emotional and intellectual responses to the text are very important. Like, what feelings does the text evoke? Does it make them sad? Does it make them feel happy or what? And also, what thoughts or memories does it trigger from the past of the reader. Next is connections and disconnections. How does the reader connects the text to their own life, to their own experiences, or other things that they've encountered in the past? Like how? So where do they find points of connection and disconnection within the text on their own life? That's in exploring the reader's response. Now moving on to analyzing the reader's perspective. First one is their background and beliefs. The reader's background, including their cultural upbringing, personal experiences, and values, really shapes them how they interpret or analyze a particular text. Next is interpretive communities. The reader's understanding is also influenced by their interpretive communities, like the place they belong to, such as their social group, their profession, how they behave, their academic discipline. It depends on that how they respond or analyze a text. So moving on, number 4, understanding the text impact. So here, meaning and meaning creation. The reader's response is not just a opinion. It their responses are one of the element of the this approach, because um, based on its definition, um, reader response criticism, it's how you as a reader give reaction or meaning to the text. So that's why we have here meaning creation. It is a also a important element of the approach. Last one is transactional process. Why it is transactional? It is because the reader and the text engage in a transactional process where both of them give meaning and yun nga, give meaning on the text. So to conclude, reader response criticism says that you as a reader aren't just passively receiving a meaning from the text. You actively create meaning also based on your own life, beliefs, and your own experiences. That this makes the reading becomes more personal and will really help you understand the text in a deeper and a more meaningful way. Thank you.